Well, Lamesha, thank you so much for being here. I'm honored that you're here on this podcast to have a conversation with us about your relationship with alcohol. And I think it's amazing how everybody has such a different spectrum of where they're at with alcohol, whether it be sober curious, still drinking, or completely sober. So I'm going to hand it over to you and you can introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, what your life is about, and then we'll get into the juicy bits of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I am a life and mindset coach for people all over the world. I set out to create positive change in the world by helping others do that in their own lives. I'm a mom of two, a military spouse. I've been coaching for almost 13 years now. When I'm not life coaching and changing the world, I'm focused on my own personal growth. Recently, part of that has been curiosity around living a sober life, primarily because I have two kids, one who is two, and she keeps me very busy. So I want to be around for a while for them. But I'm excited to talk about this because I think you're right. Everyone has their own experience and different motivations for that.
Even with you speaking to what you work with is people evolving into new versions of themselves continually and coaching other people through that. I like that you shared that, with all of that in the side, now you are coming to a space and that I like the idea that it's evolving into that,
Yeah.
that it was maybe not on your radar, even all these other practices that you do and the life that you lead and the way that you role model to your children and to your clients, that now this is kind of the next step.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what does sober curious look like to you, and how long have you been kind of dipping the toe in or exploring the idea of living an alcohol-free life?
I've been reevaluating my relationship with alcohol since right after 2020, like 2021. 2020 was the year that everything shut down. We were all at home and we got into new normals, whatever that was. And the new
Drinking
normal
more
for
wine?
us, yes, was new normal glass or two of wine pretty much all the time. It was just a habit. It was something that I didn't even think about it. Over time, it was just an ongoing occurrence. I think probably when I was trying to get pregnant with my daughter, which was around 2021,
Okay.
I had to stop drinking for the fertility medications to help my body prepare for being pregnant. And so I started really noticing that I was having to stop it. And it wasn't hard to stop. I had a really good reason to stop, but it just had me thinking like, now I have different time in my evening. I need to do something different. I would normally reach for a glass of wine after dinner, and now I'm reaching for water. It was just a really interesting time. And then, of course, when I got pregnant, didn't drink for all of the 9 months. And then I was breastfeeding, so I didn't drink for that time. And then I was really looking forward to coming back because, not having it for so long. And then after that point, I started noticing some anxiety. I'm always kind of an anxious person, but I noticed it really escalated the next day if I've had wine or a
Yes.
couple of days after. And I was just like, wow, this is a new thing. And I didn't know if it was postpartum, if there were all these hormonal changes. It could have been all of the above, but I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt. It was a lot. So I
Well,
started.
and I think when you said you were looking forward to coming back because that habitual pattern to head towards that, but that was it almost right away when you decided that you could have a couple glasses of wine here and there that you started to experience that anxiety?
It was, I don't know that I noticed it was anxiety. I
Mm.
knew that I felt different. And I thought, oh, I've got a newborn. I'd stopped breastfeeding at this point. So it was probably 3 months after I had her. I was looking forward to it because that's what all the moms, you have a baby and you're like, oh, first cocktail, first glass of wine. But I noticed I had a shorter fuse with my kids. I was snippy and not in the right headspace. And I kept kind of contributing it to at first to, oh, well, maybe it's just I'm tired, not sleeping well, and I'm getting back to work. I stopped. This is where the sober curious kind of came in. I was like, okay, I'm not going to drink for a little bit and see. I noticed the shift. But then when I would have a glass of wine, 2 days after I had brain fog, I felt very tired. I had no energy. I was anxious. It was really bad. And
Yeah.
I thought it's almost not even worth it.
Isn't it interesting that in the mom group, everybody talks about going back? It is
Yes.
so culturally normal. And actually, I, of course, quit drinking when I fell pregnant. And at first, I thought I was going to have a hard time doing that. but it just felt so easy. Aside from the fact that you've got another human being growing in your body, I really thought I was going to struggle. So I was quite happy to see that I didn't. 3.5 years ago, it was the same. I think it held me back from even speaking about it because I felt that it was so easy that my story might not land. If I just gave up that easy, then it mustn't have been a problem for me. So when we go back to that part, it wasn't difficult. The outside world is so focused on it that you
Yeah.
feel like you're not part of something when you're not doing that.
The relationship with alcohol for everyone is such a spectrum. There are people that aren't inclined to drink. They don't think about it. And then there are people that have really big problems. But I think the majority of us live somewhere in the middle. And there's seasons of our lives of, our relationship changes. And I think for me, the biggest was noticing it wasn't hard for me to give up when I was trying to get pregnant. I just noticed, oh, this is what I normally do. My brain is just going to reach for this thing. I'm not even asking myself, do I even want that? It's just this habit. I heard this saying a while ago that said some of the best things that we can do for ourselves are easy to do and they're easy not to do. I
Yes,
used to think of it with the glass of
yeah,
wine. It was so easy to do it, but also easy not to do it. And that's not to discount people who have a really hard time with it. Of course,
got it.
there's real challenges, but that was my experience as well.
Not easy to do and easy not to do. I use that with clients that when I say you just need to do these little exercise snacks, 1 minute, five
Yep.
times a day, the day goes if you do it or if you don't, right? I was speaking with a friend last night about people who struggle because her ex-husband, lovely human being, struggled with alcohol for 20 years and he's sober now. Sometimes people, it's getting through the day, but it's also I feel a lot of gratitude for not having that struggle. Like we all have our unique struggles, but to be feeling that way each day, to think, okay, I can make this decision and it's actually easy to make. What a gift, right?
Yeah,
And the gift of the benefits that we get from not drinking.
absolutely.
So when you quit for the IVF, had there been times before that where you had something internally? Because if you look at it and go, okay, this is prescribed, you don't drink, and then when we're pregnant, you're told not to drink, of course. Had there been times before that you kind of crept your toes up to the edge of it and said, hey, I'm going to hold myself to the flame here, decided not to, whether it be for a physical endeavor, or was the IVF the first kind of stepping back and looking into it with a little bit of inquiry?
No, I had some internal, like, I'm probably doing this a bit more than I should. I noticed I was more tired during the week. So if I was drinking on work nights or school nights, right, I was more tired and I was getting up and working out in the morning and I was just dragging. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it on weekends. I made that deal and I did that for a while. And then it kind of crept back into, the work week as well. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do dry January and see what happens. I noticed that for me, the draw coming back to it, it's almost out of boredom, right? Like I was going to celebrate something and then I'd get back into it. It's so much
Mhm.
easier for me. I find that it's either I'm going to drink or I'm not going to drink. An easy habit for me to get into. We were just traveling and we were at dinner and my wife's like, "Do you want anything?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm good. I haven't had anything since maybe New Year's Eve." At this
Yeah.
point, it's easy to do, easy not to do. It's so much easier for me not to dabble at this point.
Think about the training. When you get in, and I say it to clients, when you stay in the flow, like if someone comes to like, I'm not 100%, you being here today is not about giving 100%. It's about just showing up. And
Yeah.
when you stay in, then you have one reason to have a drink, and then it starts to sneak in. And it's the same as the one excuse of why you're not going to train when you had decided that you were going to train on that day, right?
Yep.
So I think that those habitual pieces, they run across the whole fabric of our life. When I was younger, we weren't even mindful of the thought that we would not drink. It
Yeah.
didn't even cross my mind. I would
Mm-mm.
stop drinking before a competition. And actually, back then, I struggled with it. And I would sneak a wine here and there, but you can't lie to your body. Right? I think it's quite interesting that now at least there's dialogue. At least there's a sober movement. When we were younger, it didn't even cross our minds in our early 20s to be the non-drinker. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really know anybody that didn't drink. Even in the
Mm-hmm.
personal training world, I worked in bars too, and the personal training world in London, everybody, it was just, of course you're drinking. There was literally a few people that didn't. So I think that pulls you along in that space where, if I'd been more inquisitive about what I really wanted, it would probably would have happened earlier, but here we are.
Right.
Yeah. So do you find, Lamisha, that you've got good support systems like your wife and the friend group that you're in? They're quite moderate, either with their consumption or they don't drink at all?
It's helped. It wasn't really an issue when we decided to drink or not drink. There was a time when I was still having some wine and my wife was not drinking at all. She went a whole year, was just like, yeah, I'm not interested. I'm just not going to do it.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, okay, it's fine. Now we're both not drinking currently. It's not a problem. When we hang out with our friends, if they have kids, and sometimes they'll drink, sometimes they won't, and there's no pressure either way. I think one of our last get-togethers, I brought the alternative stuff that I was enjoying and was like, here, if you want to try it, no pressure. We're just
Yeah.
accepting. And that's the other thing I think, there's no judgment on this side for me.
Yeah.
If you drink, great. If you like it, great. If it works for you, perfect.
Mhm.
Your own personal preference, and that's just been the way that I've always looked at it. I think a lot of times there is the judgment of what you should or shouldn't do. To each his own, do what you feel called to do.
Do you know who Millie Gooch is? She's does Sober Girl Society, and she was doing her TED Talk, and she spoke about how even when you're not placing judgment on people, especially if people have some issues with it and are triggered by your decision to not drink, they may feel judgment, but really it's their own internal. She said, if you say that you don't drink, people assume you're boring and judgy. But if someone said, oh, I'm choosing not to smoke cigarettes or I'm choosing not to vape, most people wouldn't feel that you were judging them from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol's a little bit more endemic in the way that so many people do it. I think everybody's waking up to the scientific facts behind health and well-being and it contributing to 7 cancers and inflammation. People are starting to wake up to that the same way they woke up, that's as a society as a whole woke up to that in the 80s with smoking.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody is struggling, you don't want to say, I don't want anybody in my life to feel pressure from me.
Mm-mm.
There's certain scientific truths that we have to be honest with ourselves about if we are going to do something that is going to harm us, but that non-judgment. Did you feel, for instance, when your wife wasn't drinking and you were choosing, did you enjoy that glass of wine as much as you did if you were both having a glass? Did you
Probably
feel
not.
guilty?
If I'm being honest, probably not. I think it was just the habit, but I definitely didn't drink as much. So if I was going to have one glass, I might have just one glass of wine. Whereas if there were more people, I'm probably going to have two. The more the merrier kind of thing. We find that if one of us isn't doing it, it's easier for the other person not to as well. Again, there's no judgment, but if we don't keep it in the house, we don't even think about it. And even going out to dinner, I think now, how do I want to feel tomorrow? I talk about this with my
Yeah.
clients a lot. How do you want to feel on the other side, to pay the price for today? I've got two kids that keep me ripping and running, and I can,
Choosing to not
yeah,
feel my best when I've got those responsibilities, right?
absolutely.
So when you said you would go to a party and took your non-alcoholic versions, is there conversations about it? If you go to a social gathering, do you feel there could be misconceptions about how people think it might change you, even though deep down I have more fun, I'm happier, I've got more presence and space for Jasmine, my daughter, and even in my
Mhm.
relationships, I can be there more. Do you feel like there's some misconceptions from what you've seen since you've been toying around with an alcohol-free life?
No, I think the circles we socialize in are in a different place in their lives. If I had been doing this in my 20s or 30s, I can think of places that we've lived before where we had neighbors and we would hang out. We'd have what we call driveway parties, which always
Yeah,
had alcohol.
yeah.
If we would have done it at that point, it might have been a little different because everyone was in a different place in their lives. But the circles that we have now are in a similar place. They've got young kids, so it's not usually an issue,
That
where
makes
the
more
other.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you find that now in this space in your life with your coaching, with your wife, with your children, with your community that you surround yourself with, are there habits you have noticed, for instance, when you're with lifting or with your training or even with how you're able to coach? Can you feel a difference when you go? For instance, if you went through a span of a couple months without having, like you said, it's been New Year's Eve was the
Mhm.
last time, right? Do you
Yeah,
find a difference there with your habits, with your practices?
for sure. I'm definitely more clear-headed, so I make better choices across the board. I get up before my kids to train and do what I need to do before the house wakes up. I'm drinking more water. It's just like the habit stacking that we all talk about. It
Yes.
makes such a huge difference. I'll meditate, I'll move my body, I'm eating better, I'm sleeping better. I didn't realize the sleep piece
Oh,
with
huge.
alcohol versus after. That was a real eye opener. Especially the older I get, it was really having an effect. I sleep better. Just everything feels better. Like I can see clearly, my brain is clearer, everything. So
Yeah.
there's a huge difference.
And you mentioned habit stacking. I like to think the foundation of not drinking is giving you that foundation to be able to do those things so that nothing is overwhelming you. If you say you're going to train today, you're going to train. If you
Yeah.
say you're going to meditate or meal prep or all the things that come with creating a healthy diet and living properly, that foundation is strong to start. It is a habit, but as soon as it becomes like that, you don't think about it, it hasn't even crossed my mind once to have a drink. I was
Yeah.
just like, no, I'm done. That's a foundational thing. Those habits that you stack on top are enhanced by that foundation being strong, right?
Yeah, it's easy to do it, easy not to do it now. And the other piece, of course, I'm strength training for my body, but my primary reason is how I feel after. When I do
Yeah.
mindset work, is how am I going to feel? So, and on a value system, drinking, if I'm thinking about that, I'm not saying I'll never have another drink again, but if I'm actively choosing, how do I want to feel tomorrow? How do I want to feel? Am I doing it for the temporary feeling that I'm going to have now, or am I doing it for the choice and how I want to feel tomorrow? If I'm thinking in that way, I'm always probably going to choose the latter, right? If I'm in that state of mind. The habits, it's so interesting how it plays into everything.
Well, thinking about how you feel in the moment, I've been strength training for 35 years. When I was in my 20s and I first started lifting heavy, I loved it so much. I look back on those days and realize that was such a radical act of self-love, even though I was also tipping the glass up a bit. But the long game, and I say it to clients, if you make a decision to do something that you don't necessarily want to do, you don't want to go to the gym, you don't want to show up for your session, you don't want to get out for that walk or do that study, whatever it is you're studying, once you are in it, the reward system kicks in, but also those benefits are for life. Even the not drinking, I think about it sometimes. I'm clearing the palate. Every year I go further in, that I still have those glimmers where you drive down the road and I feel an overwhelming sense of well-being and happiness and gratitude that I didn't really feel when I was drinking. I
Yeah.
feel like training does the same because you might not notice that strength until you can do the thing that you're doing, whether it be lifting a certain weight for your personal best or doing a one arm handstand. It'll come in time, but the rewards come here and now. And I think alcohol intake's the same, that it's
Yeah.
like the feeling, the good feeling is there. And it also gives you that autonomy that you've chosen to feel good. How do I want to feel? It's all in our hands, which is so powerful and
Yeah.
magical that we get to choose. Do you have a gratitude practice? Do you feel like that because of the work that you do and you're out there to create change with your clients and impact people? Do you come back to gratitude at the end of the day? And do you feel that that's impacted when you are choosing to drink?
I don't have a gratitude practice per se. I have a mindset practice. I do journaling in the morning, and that's the reflection. I'll do my goals, meditation. I often will create something called like what I call a love list as opposed
Yeah.
to a gratitude list. It's thinking of all the things I loved about the day or just in general. I noticed my frame of reference, my perspective is much brighter and more open. I deal with challenges a lot better
Yeah.
when I'm not drinking, even just a glass of wine. I have so much more patience in just the day to day. I have the clarity of mind to handle life and what's happening. I used to think that the glass of wine was to help me, it was supposed
Yeah.
to help me calm and deal with life better. But the cosmic joke was that it didn't actually do that. It created, more challenging way of dealing with things. It wasn't easier, it was harder because my anxiety was not great. My mindset also not great during those times. I notice a huge shift in that. Even now, when so much is happening in the world where I could easily go, I just need to escape. I just need a glass of wine. I just need, my wife and I kind of joke like, hey, I just need a drink. I need to relax. And then I reach for my non-alcoholic thing. I know that I can make it through this. It's going to be lighter and brighter on the other side. I'm making an
Yeah.
active choice.
I feel like you said about calm or brightness and feeling like you deal with conflict a lot better. I feel the same in that it gives you almost like a micro moment. I feel like it has allowed me to sidestep from the path we go down, whether it be victim mentality or this is stressful. I don't actually have to respond in the same way. I mean, that's a lifelong journey anyway. But when
Yeah,
you take the alcohol away, it kind of shoots you forward with regard to how you can deal with those things because your nervous system is more in tune. It's more regulated by not having that toxin there. And I think
absolutely.
with the whole I need a drink mentality, we've been sold that too. That whole the glamorous glass and wine. I love to have a glass of wine in my hand. And
Yeah.
I was still trying to find it hard to find a good non-alcoholic wine because I like the elegance of it.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's by mistake that that has been sold to us, like thinking that this is a solution to how you're feeling, where
Yeah.
really it's just compounding that. And if you are doing that all the time, it's like you never can quite get out, even with the training. You
Yeah.
said when you were training, it felt a bit gluggy. And I think about that whole gratitude that I don't have to train for payment. I don't
Absolutely.
always want to train, or when I do, I feel great as soon as I pick up a dumbbell. But it's that investment as opposed to paying out just to get back to baseline, right? So now, Lamisha, do you have any, speaking of your magic that you work with your clients, do you have any upcoming offers or any events or programs that you're running or somewhere that we can send people if they want to learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so I do have some one-on-one coaching opportunities available. I work with clients anywhere from 3-month packages or 6-month packages. If they have a big dream, a big goal, something they want to get some support with, some mindset support with, I help in that regard. I also have a newish podcast I started in
Oh,
November. It's called My Life Coach Says.
I like it
uh,
already.
yeah, I came up with that idea. And it's really just sort of having that weekly, motivation, inspiration to help you take action and be consistent with your goals and also help with the belief piece behind the scenes. Check that out anywhere you
I'll
get
share.
podcasts.
Yeah, and
Any,
I'll share all that information there with your Instagram and your podcast. I like to close it out with a question from my previous guest.
yeah.
Christina's question was, if you had a song or a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
I've had so many seasons of my
Yeah.
life, so many interesting seasons. And I couldn't pick one song. Well, I did pick a song, but the artist I selected is Pink for so
Yep.
many reasons. She has been the soundtrack. All of her albums have been a soundtrack to my life in those seasons. But the one that I really love is Cover Me in Sunshine. I was reading the lyrics yesterday to really encompass the message. And it was just really like looking for brighter days, right? It's a feel good song for wherever you're at now. Know that it's not going to last forever and brighter days are coming. Just really spoke to me. And I loved it when it was released. And I think it still stands true.
And her journey too, if you think about way back to early 2000s when she first, that's her soundtrack, like that's her evolution and growth too, which
Yeah.
is quite magnificent to where she is singing that song with Willow, right? I love it. When Christina asked me to, I was like, oh wow, that's a big one. I'll just create a playlist instead with every version and every genre that I can come up with. Oh, thank you so much, Lamisha. Now I need to ask you, what is a question that you would like to leave behind for the next guest?
I'm going to leave a question that I asked for years in my 20s before I knew whatever it is that I'm doing now. I would ask every person that I worked with, they were much older than me, if money weren't an issue, if restrictions weren't an issue, what would you choose to do with your life and why? And the second part of that question is if you're not doing that right now, why aren't you doing
Why?
it?
I love it. That's kind of along those lines. I don't remember who it was, but he's like, if you knew you couldn't fail. So it's very parallel to that. And I think that's the other part when you can really ask yourself what it would look like if there weren't those obstacles and how do we know what obstacles we
Yeah,
place there without meaning to. Okay, well,
exactly.
I'm going to have that ready for the next person.
So,
Thank you so much for sharing space here, for sharing your story, and for jumping in and having this conversation because I think it's so powerful to hear all the different variations and quite cathartic to listen to other people's stories. Thank you for sharing yours.
Yeah,
And
thank
I'm
you.
excited to go and listen to your podcast too.
Thank you
Okay,
for
well,
having me.
thank you for coming. It has been a pleasure to chat with you.
You too.
Have a great day.
You too.